Hello, it's Linn here. Welcome back to the channel. In this episode I'm doing more work on this 1/48 scale de Havilland Chipmunk, and the next thing the instructions want us to do is to apply some decals inside the fuselage before we glue the two halves together. So let's have a look at that next. At the moment I'm only interested in the decals in this section along the top here entitled Common. If you look at section 7 of the instructions shown in the inset top right, it wants us to apply decals number 3, 4 and 5. Now at the moment I can't even see decals 3 and 4, so I hope they appear once we get them applied. The first thing I'm going to do is cut the decals that I want, 3, 4 and 5, away from the main sheet. Then I'll separate them individually. One thing I'm interested to find out is, are the numbers 3, 4 and 5, are they printed on or are they decals as well? One thing I'm keen to try out is this stuff Microset, and the only reason I'm using it is because everyone else seems to be using it, and apparently it's very good for sticking decals to your model kit, so why not? You start off by putting your decal into the hot water to soak, and then you apply this Microset with a brush. Does that seem like a lot to you? It seems like a big blob to me. Anyway, let's carry on. I've got the decal out of the hot water now. I'm just trying to mop up some of the excess water. And now the moment of truth, does this number move? Yes, it does. So the 3 is a transfer. You all probably knew that, but I didn't, so it's good to find out. Now I'm just trying to figure out a good way of picking it up and sliding the decal into position. And then I remembered I've got 2 on this carrier sheet, so I need another blob of Microset in the other position. Now these are nice tweezers. I found these in the same market stall in Havia that I found the snippers. I think they're German made, but they feel very good anyway. Also, I had great difficulty seeing the decals on this backing paper, but as I slid something along, the decals appeared dropping into the Microset, so that's good. The Microset still looks a bit like it's flooded, and I'm not sure where the decals are. Are they beneath the Microset or are they on top of it? So I thought I'll have a go at mopping it up with a cotton bud, and it mops up quite quickly, and then pushing the decal down into the model. And then I was surprised that the decal wasn't actually stuck, but that's good. That gives me some open time to maneuver it around and get it in the correct position. By the way, I'm definitely going to call this Microset Microsoft at some point. Well, that was a good first experience using Microset. Quite pleased with that. Now let's move on to the other fuselage half. This gets 4 decals, 2 each in decals number 4 and 5. And here I'm using the Microset, but a bit more sparingly. Then it finally dawned on me that I can use the decal ident number, the number 4, to tell me when the invisible decals are ready to slide off. The first one seemed to drop in quite nicely in the right position, but the second one kind of came off at an angle, but I think this is where the Microset comes in handy. It seems to allow the decal to float around so you can position it and take your time about it. This is the second decal of number 5, and this one was a little bit tricky. It has to go up into this kind of little recess, and it just took me a little while to manoeuvre it in, but we got it in the end. Well, I'm quite pleased with that Microset. I can definitely see why everyone raves about it. Now if you remember the last video, I was painting these seat belts on these seat cushions, and I was using a rubbish brush, and I hadn't painted for decades. My hand was a bit shaky, and the result was a little bit splattery and raggedy, so I thought I'll give it another go. So I painted over the seat belts again, and the seat cushions as well, with the black paint. It's satin coal black Humbrol enamel. And then I went and bought this brush. It's a 3/0, and I'm having another attempt at it, and I must say it's very relaxing because I'm in the workshop. It's about 4:30. It's dusky outside, it's warm, there's a little smattering of rain on the ceiling, and I'm practically holding my breath to try and keep my hands still when I'm doing this, and it's just so relaxing and therapeutic. So the end result, having done both seat cushions, is a bit better. I think it's a bit better. certainly more practice required, I think. Okay, returning to section 9 of the instructions, and here we're asked to glue the cockpit bathtub into the left fuselage half. So here I'm using my chisel to scrape away any paint off glue surfaces. I'm applying the Tamiya extra thin to both the fuselage and the cockpit bathtub, but you can see the scrape marks that I made, and I found that the chisel was a little bit too wide, so for the other fuselage half I found a 3mm wide router plane blade, and I'm going to use that to scrape the paint off there. But this glue up went quite well, a little bit fiddly to get right initially, but after holding it, it's quite firm. And now we can proceed to get the other fuselage half joined. Right, when I did a test fit of these two parts, I found that it wasn't quite meeting here and it wasn't quite meeting down here, but it's meeting everywhere else. So my strategy is going to be to put some of this Humbrol poly cement on the cockpit bath, as it were, bring the parts together and try and put some extra thin quick setting up here and hold that and get that right first of all, and then come back and do the rest. So let's proceed with that. There's a little bit of poly on my stick. It's very stringy, this glue, but I get it on quite quickly. Applying it to the lower edge of this section so that it's going to squeeze out. Hopefully it will squeeze inwards. And there's a little kind of a bulkhead, a little kind of guiding groove that's on the inside, so if I get the glue in there it might squeeze the inside. Let's get some poly on there just to prime it. I need to change positions for this. Good, now we'll run some poly along here. I'm not 100% sure this will work. It's not the way I used to do it back in the day. Let's see if I can just hold this tight till it sets. By gluing the fuselage half together in sections, we can control each section in turn rather than trying to do the whole lot at once. Right, let's try letting it go. There we go. Okay, the next section is to do the fin and the top of the rear fuselage. Oops, that's a big drop. Wonder where that went. I better find it. Yeah, it's there. Take all that off before it sets. I might have just made a mess. Oh, never mind. Right, hold that together. Hold that tight. Good, now let's do the underside. So I'm not 100% good at putting this glue in. I would expect it to, I've seen on YouTube guys getting it to run in without any mess, but I seem to be getting some mess. Anyway, it'll clean up once we've come to clean up the fuselage joints, which you always have to do. The important thing is this bit here, this central section. That looks pretty good. Now this front section now, it's going to be a bit problematic because it just doesn't want to come together. I wonder if I could force it. Well, some good amount of glue went in there. I saw it running. Force it tight. It's squeezing out. That means good contact. Let's just hold it tight as we can. Right, let's tentatively let that go, see what happens. Yeah, you can see it's slightly stretching. I don't want to use tape because I've never had success with taping up a joint where the glue tends to spread under the tape and has more cleanup. I'd rather just sit here, be patient, and hold it until I'm absolutely sure it's set. These bits here were digging into my skin and it wasn't comfortable, so I'm just going to use some blue tack to try and get firmer pressure, but I think that is pretty much stuck. And if I apply downward pressure, I'm pressing the underside of what I'm doing here onto the workbench, so I've got pressure coming in at say 45-degree angles onto that joint. You can't see I'm not applying pressure, so that's not the problem. I think you just have to be patient until the glue sets. Yep, I think that's set. Now let's turn over and see if it's had any effect on what we've done already. Nope, I think that's all set. There's a tiny little gap there. A touch of filler would do that. Let's just leave that to set before we carry on with it. Right, it's time to move on to section 13 in the instructions, and we need to cut out this little part here. It's a kind of a bulkhead, part C24. And we also need this little part here. These parts aren't going to be seen. This bulkhead is part of the structure of the model kit. But I'm just gluing this part on because, why? I don't know. I'm just going to glue it on. This is section 14 of the instructions, and holding this is a little bit difficult. I've got it blue tacked to a wooden block. I'm just going to run in some of the extra thin into this joint. Place it on like that, squeeze it from the sides. I think it's in that position. There's no real locating pins or anything, so that feels about right. That feels quite firm. Run a bit more in there. It's not 100% brilliant fit, some of the parts in this kit, which you would expect a larger scale. Well, that's not gone right. You expect a larger scale kit to be a bit better fit than this, but we're making it work, aren't we? Right, moving on to section 15 now. I need this part here. I think it's a cockpit combing. Be careful here, there's a little nub that needs to be preserved just at the end, so when you cut it off quite far away, then just carefully trim it off like that. Now we can get closer and finish off with the chisel. As always, keeping things secure with the blue tack just provides a much firmer surface to work, particularly if you're using a sharp blade, and I just like to use the scraper edge. Now into that bit goes part of the cockpit. Let's find that next. There it is, instrument panel. Again, I'll cut it wide, blue tack, set it firmly. There's a letter F just there. I presume that means forward. Now you might think I'm cutting towards myself, but I'm bracing my hand firmly on the desktop. This needs more support. Let's use the tweezers. Much prefer scraping to sanding every time. Doesn't matter if this gets a bit blobby because this is going to be underneath and painted. Now I'm going to use the tweezers to drop it in like that. Good. Let that dry for a while and then get the paint out again. Right, now I've assembled the front and rear cockpit instrument panels, and before I can put the cockpit instrument decals on, I need to paint it. So I've got it's a little bit, it's not very secure, is it? Because it's on end grain, that's why. Well, that should be better. I don't want to fill up the instrument panels with paint, so I've got the brush not very wet, just wiping off as much as I can before I go in there. I'm going to stay off the glue surfaces, but I'll do a little bit underneath, inside the combing as well. Now once we've done this, of course, we will do a bit of weathering with the, I don't know, maybe use the light grey again. That worked quite well last time. Making it look like it's been well used. These cockpits always got scruffy and scraped. As I said in a previous episode, I really wish I could remember my Chipmunk flights, but I really can't. I honestly cannot remember a single one of them. I think that's us done. Nothing that can't be touched up later. Right, we'll leave that to dry and then get the decals on. Okay, it's time to apply the decals onto these two instrument panels. So I'm going to be using Microset first of all, it says in the instructions, a little bit on each, and then Microsol after I put the decal on. So what I'm going to do is apply Microset on both, and then slide the decals into place on both, and then do the Microsol. So let's do some Microset first of all. I don't want too much, I think I've learned that lesson. That looks much better than it was before, spreading much easier. I'm not really sure how to do this. I'll try sliding it upwards. Oh, there it goes. Microset. Now once I've got this on, I have to leave it. So there we go. Just leave it alone. I think the decal is actually bigger than the instrument panel. Anyway, we've done it now. So let's just leave that. Okay, I think the decals are dry enough to get this cockpit combing into place. I've already done a little bit of a test fit and it's not particularly a good fit, so what I'm going to do, my strategy is to do this side first and hold that in place till it dries and then do the other side, because the fit's not brilliant, but let's give it a go. We're getting some extra thin in there. Not sure if that's the right stuff to use. It's the extra thin quick drying stuff. Just let it run in and just hold it firmly. I think I might actually try and get some in there as well. Carefully turn it round whilst keeping the pressure on. I can get some in this joint here, like that, but I think I'm going to have a gap, so I might have to fill that later. The rear cockpit seems to be a much better fit, just dropped in and snapped in quite nicely, so it's quite easy, just run the glue in and leave it, I think. Well, I think that'll be enough for this episode. We're making reasonable progress. It does feel a little bit slow, but remember I'm coming back to this after a long period off, so I'm having to try and figure things out again, almost as if it's the very first time. But I think we're making reasonable progress, and in the future things will pick up pace a bit, but of course the idea isn't to do things as fast as possible, but to just enjoy it. So that'll do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Mr. Linn's Model Shop.